Jack Carter wasn't looking to be anyone's hero. He just wanted a hot cup of coffee and 5 minutes of peace before diving into another long day at the garage. Life hadn't been simple since his wife, Emily, passed away 2 years earlier. Raising his spirited 5-year-old daughter, Lily, on his own while juggling full-time work as a mechanic in the small town of Maplewood often left him exhausted, emotionally and physically. But somehow, the little coffee shop on the corner of Main Street, Bean and Bloom, had become his safe haven. It wasn't anything fancy. Just a few mismatched tables, chalkboard menace, and the aroma of fresh pastries. But it gave him a place to breathe, a ritual that anchored his mornings. And it was run by Claire, a woman with a calming presence and a knack for remembering his order and his daughter's favorite muffin flavor. That Monday morning, Jack immediately sensed something was off. The usual warm glow of the cafe lights was dimmer, the pastry case had more empty shelves than full ones, and Claire looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her smile was still there, but it faltered at the corners, as if she were trying too hard to keep it all together. "Rough morning?" Jack asked, handing her a wrinkled $5 bill. Claire hesitated, then gave a small shrug as she poured his coffee. "More like a rough month," she said quietly. "Rent's due, suppliers haven't been paid, and business has been slow, too slow." She didn't need to say the rest. Jack heard the truth behind her words. The shop was failing. He sat by the window, stirring his coffee absently, watching the rain drip down the glass. Maplewood was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone. But people were busy with their lives, not always noticing when something began to fade. Jack looked around the place. There were memories etched into these walls. He'd brought Lily here on snowy mornings, sat through her tantrums with a cookie bribe in hand, and once even fixed the leaky sink in the back room. When Claire couldn't afford a plumber, it was more than just a coffee shop. It was community, it was comfort, it was home. When he stood to leave, Claire called out, "Jack, thanks for always coming in." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, the weight of her burden showed in her eyes. He gave her a soft nod, something settling in his chest. Maybe it was the same instinct that had helped him survive his darkest days. Or maybe it was the look on Claire's face, a look he recognized from his own reflection after Emily's funeral. Jack walked out into the rain, coffee in hand, but his mind was racing. He didn't have much money or time, but he had tools, heart, and a town that might care more than it realized. Bean and Bloom wasn't going down. Not if he had anything to do with it. The next morning, Jack walked into Bean and Bloom with a different energy. He wasn't there just for coffee. He was there with a plan. Lily skipped in beside him, clutching her stuffed bunny and humming to herself, blissfully unaware of the tension hanging in the air. Claire looked up from behind the counter, startled to see Jack carrying a notepad and a measuring tape. "You remodeling your garage?" she asked with a tired smile. Jack shook his head. "I'm remodeling this place, if you'll let me." Claire blinked, confused. He tapped his notepad. "I've got ideas. Better lighting, new shelves, maybe a fresh coat of paint. But that's just the start. What this place really needs is people. People who remember why they fell in love with it in the first place." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Jack, I can't afford anything right now. I'm barely holding on as it is." Jack nodded, understanding. "That's why it won't cost you a dime. I'm not talking about a big budget renovation. I'm talking about heart, elbow grease, and community." That evening, after putting Lily to bed, Jack sat at the kitchen table and posted on the Maplewood neighborhood Facebook page. His message was simple. Bean and Bloom is more than a coffee shop. It's part of who we are. Claire needs us now. Let's show up. He shared his memories, the kindness Claire had shown during his toughest times, and the joy Lily always found in the little muffin baskets. By morning, the post had been shared dozens of times. Comments poured in. People reminisced about first dates, study sessions, and cozy afternoons spent in the shop's worn leather armchairs. By the end of the week, volunteers started showing up. Retirees brought in plants and handmade signs. A group of local teens offered to repaint the walls. A woman who once held her baby shower at the cafe brought in boxes of pastries from her bakery. Even Claire's old supplier agreed to donate a week's worth of beans. Jack was there every night after work, fixing cabinet doors, rewiring light fixtures, and coordinating the steady stream of helpers. Claire stood in awe, watching as her nearly lost dream was slowly revived by people who refused to let it die. Lily, in her sparkly pink rain boots, took it upon herself to be the shop's official helper, handing out lemonade to the volunteers and singing songs while they worked. Jack, who hadn't smiled this much in years, found himself feeling lighter with each nail he hammered and each table he refinished. It wasn't just about the shop anymore. It was about rebuilding something that had quietly supported them all for years, and Claire, once on the verge of giving up, found hope again. Not because she had asked for it, but because someone believed enough to give it without hesitation. The tide was turning. The coffee wasn't even brewing yet, but something new was percolating purpose. The grand reopening of Bean and Bloom was nothing short of magical. The transformation was more than physical. It radiated through the air in every smile, every burst of laughter, every warm cup passed over the counter. The once fading walls now glowed with rich earthy tones, accented by twinkling string lights Jack had carefully installed. The mismatched chairs were freshly painted, and local kids' artwork lined one corner of the cafe. A hand-carved wooden sign hung proudly above the counter, gifted by a retired carpenter. "Where hearts come to bloom." Claire had tears in her eyes when she turned the open sign around that morning, a mix of disbelief and gratitude washing over her as the first customers walked in. Jack stood quietly off to the side, wearing jeans still stained with sawdust. He hadn't done any of it for praise, but he couldn't deny the warmth swelling in his chest as he watched life return to the place. The steady hum of conversation filled the space, broken by the cheerful melody of a local guitarist playing in the corner. Children gathered around the newly built reading nook, Jack's favorite addition, nestled under a homemade canopy of old coffee sacks and fairy lights. Lily, donning a tiny, junior barista apron Claire had made for her, proudly carried a basket of cookies from table to table, her face beaming with excitement. "Would you like a smile with your snack?" she asked, mimicking Claire's warm tone, sending a ripple of laughter through the room. Business boomed. Claire could barely keep up with the orders, but her joy was unmistakable. She moved with renewed energy, greeting every guest by name, pouring drinks with flair, and pausing for genuine conversation. And every now and then her eyes would find Jack's, and they'd exchange a look that said everything words couldn't. Gratitude, respect. Something deeper still blooming just beneath the surface. The shop wasn't just saved, it was reborn with roots stronger than ever, planted in community and nurtured by the very people who needed it most. Jack found himself staying longer each day. He'd swing by after his shift at the garage to fix a loose chair or help unload supplies. He even started bringing Lily after press school so she could clock in for her cookie rote. It wasn't long before Claire started setting aside his coffee without even asking. Their conversations grew less guarded, more personal. Jack shared stories of Emily, of the early days of single fatherhood. Claire opened up about the loss of her parents and how the shop had been her lifeline. Somewhere between shared tasks and quiet conversations over late-night lats, something unspoken began to take root between them. The town had rallied around Bean and Bloom, but more importantly, they'd rallied around each other. And in the middle of it all, two people, both a little broken, both a little tired, were finding something neither of them expected: a second chance. One cup at a time, summer slipped into fall, painting the trees of Maplewood in hues of amber and gold, and Bean and Bloom continued to thrive. What had once teetered on the edge of closing had become the heart of the town again. Families came in after church, teenagers gathered for open mic nights, and early risers filled the cafe with chatter and the scent of cinnamon buns. Jack had become more than just the guy who saved the shop. He was now part of its story. So was Lily, who had claimed a small corner of the counter as her cookie station, complete with a hand-drawn sign and a tip jar that read "for smiles only." Claire had even given Jack his own apron, Stitched with grease, stained thread mechanic by day, hero by heart. One chilly evening, after the last customer had left and the lights were dimmed to a soft glow, Claire locked the door and turned around to find Jack, still sitting at the table near the window, sipping his coffee. Lily had already curled up on the reading bench with her bunny, fast asleep, under a blanket someone's grandmother had crocheted and donated to the shop. Claire walked over and sat beside Jack, sliding a small wooden plaque across the table. He picked it up and read the inscription. To the man who mended more than machines. You gave us more than repairs. You gave us hope. Jack's throat tightened. He hadn't expected thanks. He never did it for that. I don't know how to repay you, Claire said softly, her eyes meeting his. You already have, Jack replied, glancing over at Lily. This place? It helped me breathe again. After Emily, I didn't know how to be whole. But you gave Lily and me something steady, something warm. You saved us too. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the kind that feels full rather than empty. Claire reached for his hand. Maybe we can keep saving each other, she whispered. And Jack, who hadn't imagined opening his heart again, felt something shift, something gentle, something real. From that night on, Bean and Bloom wasn't just a coffee shop. It was the place where stories unfolded, where people came to grieve, to laugh, to heal, where a single dad found family again. Claire and Jack began planning small business workshops and community events, using the cafe as a hub for connection. They added a pay it forward board, where customers could buy a future coffee for someone in need. And every evening, after the chairs were stacked and the floors swept, they'd sit by the window, watching the town grow quieter under the streetlights, sharing stories, dreams, and slowly, piece by piece, their hearts. Jack had walked into Bean and Bloom months ago looking for nothing more than a strong coffee. What he found was a second chance at life, love, and belonging. And in the quiet warmth of the shop he helped save, he discovered what truly mattered was never just the coffee, but the people who gathered around it.